Good morning, Year 6. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of February 2021. And today, in our reading session, our learning objective is to know how to make comparisons. Now, you'll notice that from the second word in our learning objective, know, that this is a knowledge based lesson. Okay. So, although we have looked at it a little bit before in some of our question stems that we have practiced, we are going to look more closely at how to make comparisons today between how characters behave or feel about something at the beginning of a story and then at the end of a story or after a big event. Okay. Now, we're not actually going to be reading any of our wholes text today, just because there's quite a bit of other reading that I'm expecting you to do. But I do want us to just think about, as a starter, the fact that in the last chapter, Stanley ran away in search of Zero. So, what do you think might happen next in the text? Okay, so you will read a little bit more tomorrow. What do you think will happen then? Pause the screen and then we will continue with our lesson after you've made a few notes. Okay, good job. Okay, so there's either two things, isn't there? He's either going to find Zero or he's not going to find Zero. Now, having our knowledge of stories and how things often get tied up unless there's a second book in a series, we could expect that he will find Zero. Maybe not in the next chapter, maybe not in the next couple of chapters, but we will see Zero by the end of the book, we think. Okay, we might not. We'll just have to wait and see, but that's what we would generally think. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen with you on Teams so I can show you where you can find the text that you will need in this lesson. Okay, so if we go on over to Teams, you will need to click on the reading channel on the left-hand side here, and that will bring up all your reading assignments. And then you need to click Files. And we are now in Autumn 2. No, we're not, we're in Spring 2. I will change that and it will say Spring 2. So click on that. And inside there, you will see Week 1. Okay, click on that and you'll see all of the resources that you need for this week. So today, you're going to need this text here, Astronauts, Throne, and Wildcat. These ones here you'll need on Thursday and Friday, just so you know that they are there. But for now, let's get back to our lesson. Okay, so being able to compare is an explain skill. Okay, so explain means explain how author's choice enhances or supports meaning. Okay, so what questions use this skill? There are many, many different questions that use this skill. However, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to look solely at comparisons, okay, making comparisons within the text. Okay, so we may have made comparisons before with two different texts, like how is the plot similar, or how is character A in this book similar to character A in a different book. But we're going to be looking at comparing within texts, just like we compared Olive to Esther in Letters from the Lighthouse earlier on in the year. Okay, so we are going to look at questions that ask us the mood and relationships and opinions of the characters and how they change throughout the text. And how does somebody feel about something compared to the beginning of the text? So, our success criteria is very similar to most other question stems, where we will underline the key information in the question. We'll understand what it's asking us to compare. We'll make reference to the change in the mood or relationship and feeling and emotion, and make sure that we comment on the original, so how they felt or what the relationship or emotion was like at the beginning and how it has changed to what it is now. So it's very important that you have both. You don't just say that they're now happy. Okay, so you've got to really, really state what the change was. Okay, so we're going to look at the first text. This is the only one that we're going to read together. The other two, one you're aware of already, and one I'm going to ask you to read on your own. So this is the one that we're going to read together. Okay, whilst I am reading, what I would like you to do is note down on a piece of paper any impressions you get of the characters in the text. Now remember, impressions just means what type of person they are, what personality traits do they have. Are they bossy? Are they considerate? Are they kind? Are they manipulative? Okay, so think about what type of person each of the characters are. Okay, let's begin. This text is called Throne. Alice shivered, wrapped her dressing gown tightly around her, and braved the short journey from her bedroom to the window. Outside, the heavily frosted grounds were glistening in the weak early morning sunshine. A faint smile twitched at the corners of her mouth. It looked like today would be the day, the grand finale of a drama that had begun 9 months ago. Heaving a sigh, Alice dumped the weeds into the barrow and wheeled it down the hill to the flower bed closest to the lake. There, beneath the pale pink haze of a blossoming apple tree, her sister Isabel and her two brothers, Max and William, were lounging around enjoying the last rays of a warm spring day. "Don't look now," drawled William, "but it looks like old Misery Guts is on the warpath again." They all turned towards the huge old house to watch their father striding across the lawn. As he approached, Alice noticed the sadness in his eyes and asked him what was wrong. So I'm just going to ask you to pause there. So we have had somebody else's impression of the father being misery, misery guts. And then we had Alice's impression of him, seeing that he had sadness in his eyes. So you might want to write that down, but we don't yet know if that is a true impression of him yet. "I've just been speaking to Dr. White. I'm afraid my test results don't look very hopeful." Alice gasped and threw her arms around him. Max and Isabel glanced at each other and rolled their eyes, while William muttered a rather half-hearted, "Oh, bad luck, Pa." "So," continued their father, "I have to start putting my affairs in order for after I'm gone. The biggest question is what to do with the house." "Simple. Sell it off and share out the money between us," said William. "I was worried you'd say that," said father. "As you surely know, I've always wanted to keep it in the family. After all, my father built up this business from nothing, and I made it even more successful. This house is a monument to that hard work, so I want it to be our legacy. It will take some looking after, so I've decided." At this point, he paused while he looked intently into his children's eyes. "To leave it to Alice. After all, she's the only one that's shown any interest in it." Alice's siblings erupted into furious protests, claiming that had they known, they would have done a little bit of work around the place too. Ultimately, William threatened to challenge the decision in court unless they were all given an equal chance, so father conceded. Max proposed a competition so that one of them could win the house and grounds fair and square. Alice's heart sank. What contest could she ever win? William was the cleverest, Max was the strongest and most athletic, Isabel was beautiful and extremely popular. Devastated that his true wishes would not be respected, father tried to think of a suitable challenge. Finally, after gazing at the lake, he announced his decision. He would award the house to whoever could throw a stone that reached the far bank. They would each be allowed one throw only. No catapults, slingshots, or any other devices could be used, and if no one managed within a year, the house would be sold and the proceeds given to charity. "You ridiculous old man," snarled Isabel. "No one could ever do that, so what's the point of trying?" Tossing her silken hair defiantly, she picked up a small pebble in her perfectly manicured fingers and lobbed it a few meters out into the lake. "There," she snapped. "That's my go. I can marry all the money I could ever need." One down, three to go. Over the next couple of months, Alice noticed Max putting himself through an intensive training program to build up his strength. and throwing skills. He had even measured the diameter of the lake and marked out an equivalent distance on the lawns to help him find his range. Eventually, he announced that he was ready to have his turn. The warm summer sun had shrunk the lake by a few meters, and he reckoned he could make the distance on most throws. Alice, William, and father gathered on the bank to watch as Max went through a series of warm ups and stretches. Then he jogged up to the lakeside and launched the stone high up into the air. A little too high, in fact, for although it was an almighty throw, he had slightly misjudged the trajectory, and the stone splashed into the water agonizingly close to the bank. 2 down. As the year grew old, Alice noticed William furtively sneaking out to the grounds alone, making sure nobody followed him. Then one chilly November morning, he appeared in a thick coat and told his family that he was ready for the challenge. Intrigued that his weedy bookworm of a brother thought he could outthrow him, Max joined Alice and father by the lake while Isabel sulked in her room. Rather like a stage magician, William let his family check that it was just an ordinary stone, then proceeded to perform a mysterious sequence of crouching and stretching movements. Finally, he sprang forward and flung out his arm. The stone rocketed out of his hand and sailed right over the lake, thudding into the ground a good few meters beyond the far bank. "Oh, well done, William," said father. Max walked over to his brother, offering his congratulations like a true sportsman. As William gleefully shook his hand, Max suddenly snatched his back sharply. There was a snap and a twang, followed by a triumphant "Aha!" from Max, who was now holding aloft a length of strong elastic which had been concealed in the sleeve of William's coat. "I said no catapults, slingshots, or any other devices," growled father. "Your throw is disqualified." That left Alice. Just Alice. And so it was that in the depths of winter, Alice knocked on her father's bedroom and told him that she was ready for her turn. Still fastening his coat and scarf, with his other children grumbling behind him, he crunched across the brittle grass behind his daughter. Along with his late wife, he had tried to treat all his children equally, yet he couldn't deny that he really wanted Alice to succeed. As they approached the lake, that hope began to crystallize into a solid belief that she had the wisdom and wherewithal both to win the contest and take care of the house. Meanwhile, Alice's thoughts were swirling around her head like the clouds of condensing breath billowing from their small party. Had she really thought this through? Had she been right to trust her father's judgment and foresight? With her head spinning, she produced a smooth pebble from her pocket. For a moment or two, she gazed at the stone, passing it through her fingers as if weighing the chances of success and failure. Finally, she said, "Well, here goes," and swung her arm. Her patience had paid off. With a strange ringing noise, the stone zipped across the smooth ice that covered the lake. 5 pairs of eyes followed its unfaltering course all the way across to the other side, where it thumped into the far bank before rebounding a short distance for good measure. "Did I win?" she asked, turning to her father with a knowing grin. Father took both her hands. "I think we both did," he smiled. Okay, so what notes did you write down? What impression did you get of each of the characters? Let's start with Alice, the main character there. So she's resourceful, she's humble, intelligent, and seems to be the only child who shows love for her father. Okay, so she wasn't mean to him or she didn't roll her eyes at him. She was very respectful of him. Father himself, he has the most affection for Alice despite wanting to be neutral. He wants to leave the house in safe hands when he is no longer alive. So notice how there isn't any mention of him being a misery guts or being sad, because that was somebody else in the book's impression of him. That's not the impression that we had as a reader. On to William. So he's sneaky, arrogant, intelligent, and he tries to con everybody, so to trick everybody. He shows no care at all when father says he's dying, and he threatens him with court action. And Max is strong and sporty. He catches William in the act of cheating, and he plans his throw, but he fails. Okay, so he did all of the training, but he still failed. And then we have Isabel. She is pretty, but very arrogant. She snarls at her father, calling him a ridiculous old man, and claims she will just marry someone rich. It says she'll marry all the money. So that meant she'll marry someone rich so that she doesn't have to worry about working or anything like that. Okay, so when we read a text, we usually learn a lot about a character, how they behave and their motives, what they want to do. Sometimes, when a big event happens, it changes a character's actions, perspective, or how we as readers view them. So, what I would like you to do is, can you think of a book you've read in which a character changes in some way, or your opinion of them changes? And how could a character change over the course of a story? So, I'd like you to pause the screen now and have a think about text that you have read yourself. When have you experienced a character change in some way? Okay, let's move on and see my thoughts. Okay, so this is an example of a really dramatic character change. Okay, that of Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. It's the perfect example for this kind of change. At the beginning of the story, Scrooge is a mean-spirited, selfish, greedy, miserly man. Your name doesn't enter the English language for nothing. Scrooge then experiences the story's main event, the 3 visits by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And once that happens and he wakes up the next morning, thanks to the messages from the ghosts, he is suddenly the most generous, joyous man in London. So that's a huge, huge change in his character. Another example could be Harry Potter. So throughout the Harry Potter series, Snape is portrayed as Harry's enemy and loyal to Voldemort. It seems that he hated Harry's father and he was bullied by him at school. Across the books, we feel anger towards him for the things he does and says to Harry. We don't like him very much. We're all on like Harry's side and we think that he's being mean to him all the time. However, it transpires, so it comes about, it appears that in the end, Snape was a double agent who did a lot to protect Harry. So he might look like he was being mean to Harry, but he was actually protecting him. He did this because years previously he fell in love with Harry's mother and decided he would do anything to protect her son. Our feelings towards Snape change and we develop some empathy towards Snape until finally at the end of the series we find out what he's really like. Okay, so using that, let's go back to this here. Okay. Did we have any change in character in this? Okay, so we had some examples of characters that did not change, like Isabel. Isabel did not change throughout. However, we did have the change from one of the brothers who said that he was going to go take the dad to court if he left everything to Alice, and he accepted defeat at the end. So we have that change there. Okay, let's move on then. I want you to think back to when we read Wildcat. Okay, you read it with Miss J in the last few weeks of last half term, and you were looking at character portrayal in the story. So you looked and you actually did some comparison then, and you compared Jed to the ocelot. Okay, so what I would like you to do is just remind yourself of this text. You can find it in Teams, like I showed you earlier. Just refresh your memory, and then we are going to do an activity based on it. Okay, so just as a quick reminder, Ashley angers Jed by snapping at him. Mum signals that Jed should go, and he storms out to the back door and off to the hillside to calm down. Jed finds his secret den and sits down to think. He then hears a purring noise and realizes it's a wild cat. He is frozen with fear and worries he is about to be attacked. Jed is constantly irritated by his mum's new boyfriend, who refers to him as he or mate, which he resents. He doesn't like it at all. He finds it very disrespectful. He is watching the news, which explains a wild cat has escaped from the zoo. The cat, an ocelot, is not quite as big as Jed feared. He talks to it about escaping and what he should do with his life before calmly leaving the den. Back at home, his mum is panicked as she has realised what was on the news. Jed thinks carefully before making his decision. Okay, so what I would like you to do is, based on what you have read, how does Mum's behaviour towards Jed change from the beginning of the text to the end? Okay, so you need to use evidence from the text to support your answer. So thinking back to our success criteria of understanding the question first. So based on what you have read, how does Mum's, oh, that's not very good, is it? Mum's behaviour towards Jed change? Okay, we know it's from the beginning to the end, and then we want to use evidence from the text to support your answer. Okay, so in my answer, I need to say what what Mum's behaviour towards Jed was like in the beginning of the text. I then need to talk about how it changed and what it is now. And I need to give some evidence from the text. So I'm going to use phrases like, in the text it says, okay, and then I might say, this suggests that. Okay, so pause the screen, have a go at this, make sure you refer to the text, wildcat, and then we can go through the answer together. This question is going to be on your team's quiz, so I expect you all to do this really well as we are going to share the answer together. Okay, let's go. Right, so at the beginning of the text, Jed's mum stands in between him and Ashley, Mum's boyfriend, and shakes her head at Jed, indicating that he should leave. So this is what she's like at the beginning. And the evidence for that is that Mum had already stepped between him and Ashley, signalling with a slight shake of her head for him to leave. This shows that she is taking Ashley's side and isn't considering Jed's feelings. Okay, so that's how she treats Jed at the beginning. At the end of the text, however, she is really worried about him being out alone and relieved to have him back. I know this because it says, back in his kitchen, Jed was greeted with a desperate hug from Mum, followed by a rapid-fire interrogation. Was he all right? Did he realise there was a wild animal on the loose? Did he know how worried she had been? There were police marksmen searching the hills right now. He could have been shot. Okay, all of this shows that she really does care about him. Okay, well done if you got that correct. Okay, one of the other activities I'm going to ask you to do on Teams is I would like you to read the text Astronauts, which is a similar length to the text that we have just read, and then you're going to answer this question. Based on what you have read, how does Alan's character change from cautious to confident throughout the text? Use evidence from the text to support your answer. Now, this one is slightly different. How does Alan's character change from cautious to confident? Okay, and then use evidence to support your answer. So this question has helped you out a little bit. It has told you that he was cautious at the beginning and he is now confident. And you just need to go and find the evidence that supports that. Okay, so I would like you to write your answer in your team's quiz. Okay, I'm not going to go through the answer for this because I want to see your answer on Teams. So you will have a couple of questions like this. Then you'll have a couple of further questions using a short piece of text. And then you'll have some think it questions. Okay, so we're going to look through the first one together and then you can do the other ones yourself. Okay, so Sean says, to understand characters at the beginning, you need to look at what they say. However, Gina says, I disagree. You can't believe what they say. You can only truly understand them from what they do. Who do you think is right, Sean or Gina? Or is there a different answer? And then can you think of an example to support your thinking? Okay, so pause the screen and have a think, and then I'll share with you my ideas. Okay, now there isn't a right or wrong answer. It depends on the situation. But I tend to agree a little bit with Gina because have you ever opened up a really interestingly shaped present that you have received from somebody? You've opened it up and then you're a little bit disappointed, but you say to them, oh, wow, that's great. Thank you so much. I've always wanted one of those. And you can see that in my tone of voice, it sounded like I was excited and I was using my words to thank them and to show that I was grateful. However, not that you could see my face, but your face, it's quite hard to disguise how you are feeling sometimes. So that actions are quite often more prevalent. Okay. You will also have this question here. So thinking about the three little pigs and the way that the wolf starts off fierce, but in the end, he runs away howling because he fell in the pot of water. That shows he is no longer fierce. Do you think that this is a really good example of a change in character? Has his character changed, or is he just reacting to a different situation? So you need to have a think about that. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is go over to Teams, find the quiz, make sure you have got the PDF documents open of Throne, Wildcat, and Astronauts to help you answer the questions. Read the questions really carefully so that you know what I'm expecting of you in your answer. Okay, best of luck, guys, and I will see you back here again tomorrow. Bye for now.